Sorry.
You never. Whatever, you've stopped all the French jokes, so that means they finally got to you.
All right.
Please continue with the Persian and French jokes.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Demai. We are starting today the final chapter of the Demai Perek Zayin Halacha Aleph. We're going to be learning today Daf Samach Hey, beginning again with the new Perek. And it's important to begin this chapter by sharing the following words of introduction. As we spoke out many times in this Masechta, topic that we learned also when we learned Masechta Shabbos, is that tithing, being ma'aseh, whether it's hevel or even only the mai, whose chiyuv is only midarabanan, to do so on Shabbos is prohibited. Simcha. Why may you not be ma'aseh hevel or the mai on Shabbos? According to most Rishonim, it's connected to the malach of makeh b'patish. And even though biblically the type of misak and keli, finalizing a product, making it fit for use, is only asad midoiraisa if what you did is begashmius, so something physical, or something that's discernible to the eye. Nevertheless, midrabanan, even if what you did is not discernible to the eye, but halachically you took something that was, so to say, unusable, and you made it usable, that's asr b'makeh b'patish. We're going to just use the words tikkun keli. Just to give you one more example, Simcha, you're not allowed to toivel a keli that needs tevilah on Shabbos. So a keli that belonged to a goy, right? V'tohed, parshas matos, we have to take to the mikvah. You're fixing it. No one can discern whether it's pre-mikvah, post-mikvah. Midrabanan, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, that's step number one. The topic of this chapter, or at least the first 5 mishnayos of this chapter, will be what happens when a person becomes aware Erev Shabbos that they will have food on Shabbos that needs to be mesukan, that has to be tithed. Obviously, if they are able to do it on Erev Shabbos, they should do it on Erev Shabbos. We're going to speak scenarios where they are unable to do it. So in our Perek, there's going to be 2 solutions. The emphasis is that there is also a third solution. That's not mentioned at all in this chapter. The 2 solutions are going to be alternating in the next 5 mishnayos. They have a similarity, but they're very different. Solution number 1, which will be the solution of this mishnah and of our initial sugya, is that a person will make a declaration before Shabbos, and that's key. That declaration will be referred to in our sugya as a t'nai. I know normally what does a t'nai mean? Simchallah. A t'nai means a condition. It's not really a condition, but that word is used over here. And they declare that the portion that I will separate on Shabbos should be truma or and meiser. Then, assuming it's allowed, which means don't think it's always allowed, but when this tanai is going to be okay, that declaration is, so to say, effective Erev Shabbos. All you do on Shabbos is making the actual separation. You make the separation on Shabbos, and we'll give more very important words when we learn the sugya, and that will be permitted. There is another solution. Not today, but remember. Also, both solution Aleph, I'll call it, and solution Beis. Solution Aleph and Beis only function if the Tanai, if the declaration is made on Erev Shabbos. Aleph is what we mentioned, is a person says that which I will do on Shabbos is Truma and Meiser, and the person actually makes the separation on Shabbos and they eat the remaining.
Oh, is that like something that's could be muksa, but if you have it in mind before Shabbat, it's not muksa?
Okay, I mean, it's a big stretch, but okay. By the way, in cases of muksa, just for the record, having it in mind normally is not enough, right? When you want to throw a stone on people that are Machal Shabbos because you're going to get them to keep Shabbos, you have to make a physical mark on the stone before Shabbos. Not enough to designate it L'Shem Kedusha as hurting another Jew. You understand? So, but okay. Option Beis, Chavra Halkop, is a person makes a declaration, and again, this declaration is made Friday. But they say that which I will separate on Matzah Shabbos shall be trumas umaiser for the food that I will eat on Shabbos. Very different. And that person then will be allowed, when he will, assuming that this would work, it doesn't always work, but when it would work, they eat on Shabbos. They cannot eat it all. They have to leave over enough for them to actually do the separation on Motzei Shabbos. Solution number 2 only works if you follow the law of Breira. Again, we have a din of Breira, because then what we need to do is, we need to say that the separation that happens Motzei Shabbos has to function, has to work retroactively. If not, just because I'm doing a mitzvah Motzei Shabbos, it doesn't mean that it was done on Shabbos. So that's the downside of option B, is that you have to rely on Breira. The downside of option Aleph, there's also a downside, is that you're actually doing a separation on Shabbos, which is Tikkun Keli. We'll have to explain how it works. There are good words that we'll have over here in the Noisa Kelim and Dachrayim that are Gavaldik, but you need as alumdis to say, it was really done out of Shabbos, even though you did the separation on Shabbos. And this is going to be the 2 solutions we're going to have in this chapter. The first topic, Halacha Aleph, Daf Samach, will be, and I know this was quoted previously, I think already twice in the Masechta, that you have a chaver who is getting invited by an Amaretz on Shabbos. He knows he's going to go there. And I just want to bring up the problem without going over the whole solution. The problem with this whole scenario is that for a person to go from being a non-Neman to a Neman, or generically non-chaver to chaver, they have to make a Kabbalah, and which is called what we call a Lubavitcher Hachlata. And part of the Hachlata, part of the Kabbalah, is that they will not eat in the homes of Amaretz. So what do you mean he's going to an Amaretz? We know about this problem, and we spoke about it before. But he's getting an invite, and he could go there. He doesn't have access to the food yet. So what he's saying is, this tonight, option number 1, that the food that I will be given on Shabbos, and our Mishnah, it's a Damai issue, and Amaretz is not a Tevel issue, it's a Damai issue. I'm going to separate. I'm already designating. He makes the full designation of Trumas U'Maisros Erev Shabbos, even though he doesn't have the food, and then he does the physical separation when the Amaretz serves him the food. This declaration that we just said is even good for Tevel. Doesn't only have to be for Damai, but there's a huge nafkamin. And this is important to remember. If a person is going to be served Tevel on Shabbos, this declaration will only be effective if the Tevel is already in their domain. They own it and it's in their rishos. Just as an example, I'm going home to my home for Shabbos. I'm late. I know that in my home there's Tevel. I realize that I'm late. I'm not going to get there early enough out of Shabbos to make the declaration. I'm going to get within the Tchum. I'm not going to be Machal Shabbos. If not, I won't be able to get there. So then this declaration is even effective by Tevel. Why? Because it's already my produce. In the Mishnah, the Mai, this tonight works Tevel or Demai. By Demai, it works even more. What's pshat even more? Let's say if I'm the Chaver, and the host is the Amaretz, that's not my food. It's not mine. It's not a Maidashus. If that would be Tevel, this declaration would not work. This is important. We will have some stories today, but Yerushalmi stories of a din, and they went in front of the Rav, and what the Rav said, and what the Rav did. So what we will discover at the end of today's daf, which is really beautiful, that even by Tevel, even though we made a very important yesod, that this Tanai by Tevel will only work if it's B'reshusai, not if it's not B'reshusai. What needs to be B'reshusai? Not the food that's going to become exempted. What needs to be B'reshusai by Tevel for the Tanai to work is the food that I will use to make the separation. Which means if I have 2 piles of food, Simcha, I don't need always to separate from pile A for pile A, from pile B for pile B. I'm going to say words, we'll speak about it another time, we spoke about it before, ideally by Tumah ben Amukov, it doesn't matter that detail, because B'diavad, even Shaloi ben Amukov, for people who understand, I can separate from pile B for pile A, as long as they have the same level of chiyuv. Cannot be Merachiv al Abtur, Abtur al Chiyuv, but as long as they are somehow equal vis-a-vis the dinam of Trumas or Maisres, I can separate one from the other. So remember these words, you will understand this at the end of today's share. Even though by Tevel it has to be Bereshusi, what needs to be Bereshusi? Not the food that I will exempt, only the food that I will use for Trumas Umaisis. Okay, we'll leave it at that. And that was a sikkim of the whole daf. Let's go read the whole thing inside. We're going to start with the Mishnah. It says the Mishnah, Hamazmin es chaveroi shoyoichal etzlan. So the mazmin, the balabas is an Amoritz, and the one who's getting the invitation, which is the Vahu, the one who got the invitation, Einoi Maminoi, doesn't trust the host, doesn't trust the balabas, that he is a Neman, because he's not a Neman. Okay, I know we're going to use the word Chaver, but it needs a Neman. And therefore, guys, remember, the issue of our Mishnah, all Yidden always took of Truma Gedoyla, right? The first Pnei Moshe and the Masechta, the issue is really going to be Trumas Meiser and Meiser Sheni. So says our Mishnah, there is a solution. Not, oh, I can't go there, you could go there. But you have to make the following declaration / Tanai on Erev Shabbos, which is Oimer me Erev Shabbos, Ma ani osid lahafresh machar. You begin speaking about that which you will do tomorrow. Now the Mishnah doesn't give you all the words because we had all the words Chavra on Perek Chamish. In the 5th chapter of the Mai, we have the formula, which is almost what we say nowadays in Eretz Yisrael, is almost mamish what the Mishnah says, with some nuances of differences. And if I just want to remind everyone that really what you do is, if you remember, if the food would be in front of you, you would make a mark. Remember that? But let's not go there. And you begin speaking about 100ths. 100ths is what will end up being Trumas Meiser, even though you cannot separate Trumas Meiser if you didn't separate Meiser Ishim. So if whoever is joining new, doesn't matter. But it's a little bit more complicated than the words of the Mishnah. But the Mishnah, Rabbeinu HaKadosh didn't have to chazir, go back to Perek Chamish, because you say that 100ths is 10% of the Meiser Ishim. And then 9 other portions like it that are near it, together with it, that's 10%, that's Meiser Ishim. And now, this initial 100ths, now I'm making that into Trumas Meiser. The Mishnah is Mekatzir, Harehu Meiser. Harehu Meiser means it's Meiser Ishim. Harehu Meiser means it's 10% of the 10%. Usha'ar Meiser Samachloi. Sha'ar would mean another 9 portions equivalent to it, which will be near it. So basically, the person designated 10%, but he already pre-designated the Meiser Men HaMeiser. And then he says, Zesh Sisi Meiser. The first initial 100ths, the initial one part of the 10%, now also in Trumas Meiser Olav, as we had in Perek Chamish. Bottom line is, he makes a declaration about something that he will physically do tomorrow. Masha ani yosed lahafresh, but he's making the declaration now Erev Shabbos. So he spoke about the Trumas Meiser. Don't forget that aside of the Trumas Meiser, he's going to designate the Meiser Sheni, which he will be Mechalal an Ma'os. When it comes to the Meiser Sheni, unlike the Meiser Ishim that he has to make a mark, he's not making a mark because he doesn't have it. But the Meiser Sheni, all he needs to do vis-a-vis the Meiser Sheni is to tell you in which part of the bowl, of the basket, of the plate, of the box it's designated in. He doesn't have to really hone in on it. It can be, but he has to say, and the Meiser Sheni, which will be separated in the northern part of the Keli, or in the southern part of the Keli, will be Mechulal an Mois. Well, Meiser Sheni, which is either B'tzvayne or B'draimai, that's step number 1. So he's saying where it's going to be designated, and the final step will be Umechulal al Hamois. And guys, that declaration, I want to tell you what happens. What happens on Shabbos? Now, let's go. What happens on Shabbos when he actually makes the separation? So we're going to learn Pshat that when he makes the physical separation on Shabbos, the status of Trumas Meiser, the status of Meiser, meaning Meiser Sheni, because we're speaking about the Mai, happens automatically. Happens automatically. Because I already made the declaration on Erev Shabbos. What am I doing on Shabbos? These will be the words. On Shabbos, I'm just identifying the portion. For Shabbos, I didn't have it. So it was not yet identified. But when you identify something, Now that it's identified, what is making the halachic separation? Your declaration that you made on Erev Shabbos. So it's Ke'ilu, I did it Erev Shabbos. And just to go with Kevan's brain of going back to Hilchah Shabbos, it's like if I open up a switch on Erev Shabbos, if I lit a candle on Erev Shabbos, even though I have it on Shabbos, so what? The action that is prohibited, that was done on Erev Shabbos. The lighting of, the kindling of, whatever the malach is by electricity, by fire, by way, it's explicit in the Torah. That's going to be the word. Okay. And again, the maila of our Mishnah, the advantage of doing it the way we did it over here, is that even those Tanoim, and later the Amoraim, that hold that Ein Bereida, this is going to work. There's no Bereida needed. Nothing has to happen retroactively. Adarabah. It's only Mikano Lahaba. The declaration is made on Erev Shabbos. It has nothing to be chalan because you don't have it yet. But the moment you identify it on Shabbos, then it happens. But it happens because you did it Erev Shabbos. So you didn't do it on Shabbos. That's the way, that's the Tanai, the first Tanai that we spoke about here in Perek Sheni. Okay, the case the Mishnah gave, like we said, was when you have an Ein Loin Lemon and Am Haaretz, and thus the whole issue is the Mai. Says Rabbi Yochanan, says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that Masnesin, our Mishnah, right? Our Mishnah that permits to designate Maisris in advance. That's basically what you're designating Maisris in advance. Ooh, that's a leniency. When do you have this leniency? Bidamai. Listen to the words of Rabbi Yochanan that could be so misunderstood as it was initially misunderstood. Aval bevadai loy. But if the issue is tevel, not demai, then this leniency that you can pre-designate, you can designate in advance. That's what designation in advance. You can't do that. Says the Gemara, it's not true. What are you talking about? How can Rabbi Yochanan can't go against a Befedish Mishnah? Asks Gemara Masnisa. And guys, we're speaking about a Mishnah here. There's 5 Mishnayos, and the 2 solutions that we spoke out in the words of introduction, you'll see it's going to be either one or the other applied. The other part of the Pedic is not about this, but 5 is all. So in the final Mishnah in this Pedic that speaks about this issue and the solution of pre-designation, the Mishnah says clearly, Tanin and Taman over there means just a couple of Mishnayos in ahead of the road. If a person has figs, that's the example of the Mishnah, and you have it in your house, but you're not home. You have it in your house Erev Shabbos, and you want to eat it on Shabbos. But for and guys, I just want to read the words. Look inside the Marafol just to have the words of the Mishnah. He quotes, or you can look on the whoever has these paginations stuff. I know with base, but he's quoting some of it. The Marafol is the 3 last lines in the narrow lines. So Mishnah he lekaman bepirkin uvetanan. Then Oimer, what does he have to say? The Mishnah doesn't quote the words, and this is how he begins. Shnei te'enim sha'ani osad la'afresh hareyu truma. And when the Mishnah says the words, the 2 te'enim, now you don't know how many te'enim you're beginning with. How much is truma simcha? Ideally, a 50th, or average, let's say, a 50th. How much is a 50th from 100? 2. 1 from 50. So when the Mishnah says, he says, a first declaration, the Mishnah goes further. We don't end with Truma Gedoyla. That there's 2 te'enim, that Sha'ani Yosel Hafra Jireu Truma, and that these 2 are not like in our Mishnahs. It's what will be at the end, Trumas Maised. No, that's Truma Gedoyla. There's going to be some pushback. There'll be some pushback. We're going to see clearly that it is Truma Gedoyla. But the kasha is, if it's Truma Gedoyla, you don't have to separate Truma Gedoyla from Demai. So if our Mishnah Halacha is giving you the pre-Shabbos declaration, the designation of Maisris in advance, if it's being done for the 2 te'enim, which is Truma Gedoyla, the first line in the Marafulda under the Gemara, Bishmamino, the Af Bevada Yochel HaHasmais. And let's go back. Says the Gemara, maybe not. How can you say that? So in Taimah, if you're going to say that even Halacha, even the 5th Mishnah of this chapter is B'demai Anon Kaimon, speaking about only Demai, that can be Leis Yachol, because now how would you say it's speaking about the Demai? So let me explain like this, that what's the Vechitema? Look inside the Rashi Elyon. He has a good chap of how can it even be possible that for you to think that the Mishnah is speaking about Demai when clearly it's not. Clearly it's not. Before the Rashi Elyon. So it says the Gemara, you can lace yarn. The Gemara says you can't do that. Why not? Because after the Mishnah opens up in the Reisha, right? That etc. There's many other declarations. Then the Mishnah says that if what you have in your house is Demai, then it quotes what you say in our Mishnah Halacha Aleph. So from the Seif of the Mishnah, when the Mishnah says that if you have Demai, from that you know that the Reisha is about Vadai. The problem is, why did the Gemara even have to go to the Seifa, where it says that Hoyu Demai is a raya that until then it was not Demai, when in the Reisha we're speaking about Truma Gedola. If you look at the Mishnah, speaks about 2. I know that you didn't know it's 100, but if you go back, if you look at Daf Ayin Amud Beis, the Mishnah says that you say to Truma, and then the Mishnah says what you say for Trumas Mais. For Mais, the Mishnah goes through all the steps. So look inside the Rashi Elyon, 5 lines from the bottom. You understand notes. Why did the Gemara even have to prove from the Seifa that the Reisha is about Tevel? From the Reisha itself, you see it's Tevel. The Chitema, right? The left column in the Rashi Elyon from the bottom, 5 lines. Chitema kate tikshe. The hotani bosh neite enim shani osa the hafresh hainu trum gedoyla and ilu b'demai am ha'aris next to all of kidde pirashina b'mas nisan. So why did the Gemara even have to come back to the kasha by showing you, since the Seif is the Reisha is Tevel, read the Reisha. Yeshloimar says the Rashi Elyon Gaval. The Matzi L'Dachuye, one would have been able to be doicha the Mishnah Halacha Hey that we're speaking about something that only has to be tied midrabanan. It's Tevel midrabanan. Tevel midrabanan, you have to take off Truma Gedola, but it's only a derabanan. In other words, what would be a derabanan? As an example, even if a person lives in the Holy Land, if the te'ein of the fig tree was planted ba'atzit she'einu naku, in other words, it's in a pot. A pot can be laying on the ground, but if it's not perforated, midoiraisa, none of it has to be tied. There, the shaykh about truma midrabanan, and therefore that could have been an answer for Rabbi Yochanan. When Rabbi Yochanan says that the leniency of our Mishnah, that you can pre-designate maasros in advance, it's only by Demai, maybe he meant only Demai or Tevel midrabanan, but not Tevel doiraisa. That would have been a doichik. Says the Gemara, you can't even give that doichik because the Reisha of Halacha Hey is not talking about anything midrabanan. That's the way we understand that. Since the Seif of the Mishnah is giving you Demai, the Chiddush of the Mishnah there is doiraisa derabanan. Doiraisa derabanan. No, in our Mishnah, not in Halacha Hey. No, clearly our Mishnah is for sure Demai. Our Mishnah is for sure Demai. There's no question about it. However, when you learn our Mishnah, the Mishnah gives an example. You, without a Rabbi Yochanan, you wouldn't need to say that our Mishnah's heter is only by Demai. And Rabbi Yochanan is saying it's only by Demai. His words are Vadai loy. What do you mean Vadai loy? Halacha Hey Vadai yes. So answers the Gemara, turning to Daf Samachem with Beis, is very important. We said this, I don't know, words of introduction. Ma Omer Rabbi Yochanan b'demai loy bevadai. When Rabbi Yochanan made a statement that the heter is only on Demai, not on Vadai, loy Omar. He didn't say that by Vadai it would not work. It would work, but not as much as it would work over here. Like we said in our words of introduction. Loy Omar. He didn't say that it never works. What he did say is, Ella masnisa b'demai. Our Mishnah is speaking about Demai. So this solution Aleph that we're calling, the pre-Shabbos designation, which allows you to actually identify it, begashmius, on Shabbos. That's something, be'emes, that works on Vadai. But in the type of case that we have in our Mishnah, that type of case, it only works by Demai. On Vadai, in this case, it wouldn't work. Which means, ma bein Demai, ma bein Vadai. That why Demai, this leniency is even though, Simcha, I'm being invited to the house of the Am Haaretz. The food that I will be served on Shabbos does not belong to me. The food that I will be given is not mine. The food that I'm going to separate on Shabbos is not mine. It's a big chiddush. So I'm making a declaration Since it's only demai, we allow adam masna even al davar she'ena b'reshusay, even though it doesn't yet belong to him. That's what Rabbi Yochanan meant. That's what Rabbi Yochanan means, and that's what he's saying. Vadai, our case by Vadai wouldn't work. Pre-Shabbos designation works. Look at Halacha Hey. But in Halacha Hey, what was the case? A person is going to his own home. That's what it says. He has figs in his home. It all belongs to him. Elamah, he's physically not at home. He's in the Beis HaMedrash. He's going to count home late. Yes, so a pre-Shabbos declaration will be valid even by Tevel Gomer Midoiraisa. But that's only because it's his already. But by Vadai Ein Adam Masna Ella Al Davar Shu B'Rishusay, which was the case of Halacha. This is very important. The solution works everywhere, but there are more limitations by Tevel. L'mashal, beginning the Peirik, this. Think I'm going to your house, not it's mine. The Tevel, that your food is not mine. That which I will designate is not mine. It's not a Maidashus, yet it works only because that the whole chiyuv to begin with is only midrabban.
Can you not say once you're invited, the food is yours?
Only Persians feel that way. Just for the record, I'm speaking to my Persian brother. So, and when we do that, he does it to me. I'm Brazilian, so this is mamash out of love, and that was just a joke.
Good answer.
And,
no,
you see that? All right, thank you. You asked me in the beginning of the class what happened to my friend's jokes. All right. Vlad has a Persian Adam. He's very angry at me now, but it's okay to say that. Says Rabbi Yanai, Havale Tanai Vadai. So the Gemara begins with the story that Rabbi Yanai would make a stipulation by his Vadai. And I want you to know from the many stories, it's going to appear that it was common that these great Tanoim, Amoraim, they would make this Tanai every Erev Shabbos. Why? For that which they had in their home. Because there's a mitzvah Einik Shabbos. Most people don't know what they have in their home vis-a-vis food. They don't know. And they have this, maybe, what would happen? What's going to happen if I'm going to discover that someone brought, and I have in my house some delicacy at the mitzvah to eat on Shabbos. I can't tithe it. So it was probably like as Eruv Tavshilan. Like before Shabbos, they would make this declaration. That's what it sounds like. That's why it's not that he knew. Just in case they'll discover on Shabbos that they have food that's b'chlal, not mu'usar, which means it's tevel, even if it would be tevel doinaisa, that's what we're learning, they would make this declaration. Now, even though he made the declaration, when it came to actually using it, there was one time that they discovered in this house food that was not mu'usar. There's a theory, and now he didn't want to rely on himself. So what he did was Sha'al Rab Chia Ruba. What is in the Babli Rab Chia Stam, even though in the Masechta Tainis Gdoila Ma'aser Rab Chia, right? That's the Ruba, because there are many Rab Chias, but the Rab Chia Stam is Rab Chia Ruba here in the Yerushalmi. He was the big Rav. So Rabbi Yanai asked him, or he sent someone to ask him, "My misakna b'shapsa." Could I actually, can I rely? I made this declaration every week. Now I found whatever in my apples. Can I actually rely on it and say, I only identified it on Shabbos, but it was already pre-designated? So Rab Chia replied by quoting the following brayso. Now we have in Parshas Re'eh, right? And Aser to Aser, the Malkoid is known by heart. Aser to Aser is called Tfu Azarecha. Just to note, the pshat of this pasuk that is speaking about Meiser Sheni, if you remember, because the Torah is telling you over there how you have to bring it to Yerushalayim, and the Chiyirchak Yirchak Memcha Hamokim, you can be pointed on money. That's the pshat. And so therefore, when the Torah says that we separate pshat, Meiser Sheni, Leman Tilmad Liyira as Hashem Alikecha Kol Hayomim, the pshat is that the advantage of Meiser Sheni is that it, so to say, obliges you to go to Yerushalayim. And not only is there a greater Gilui Alikus in Yerushalayim, in the city of Yerushalayim, but furthermore, you're going to go into the Beis HaMikdash, you're going to see the Avodah, right? So therefore, you're going to be inspired with Yiras Hashem by being in Yerushalayim. Just to know, that's the pshat. That's the Laman Tilmad Liyiras Hashem Lekecha Kolayim. The drasha that we're learning in the Baraisa is going to focus on the words Kol Hayomim. And what we're going to actually be saying is that we began this Masechta by just reminding ourselves that midrabanan, there's an isur to be ma'aseh on Shabbos. Tikkun keli, makeh b'patish. And the Kol Hayamim is being marames that there is a way for you to separate Maisres even all the days, even on Shabbos. All of this is an asmacht, of course, because Midoraisa Yutaka could be ma'aser on Shabbos. But since Midrabanan you cannot, still, what's the Kol Hayamim, says the Braisa? Vafilu b'Shabbos. Vafilu b'Shabbos means, like we're saying over here, and by the way, Tevel Gomor, right? Look inside the Rashirilio. It's 6 lines from the bottom, I think, on the right column. Kol Hayamim, Vafilu Shabbos is Yomim Toivim. Had the Lamed lihizoyer shaloi li batal oinik Shabbos. You should take precautions, never to lose out on oinik Shabbos, which means if you'll discover food that you can't eat, you're losing out on oinik Shabbos. Okay, and how can you do that? It must be, in other words, Rabbi Paskin, yes, you can rely on it. I have an asmachta that this Tanai is effective. Now, the Gemara wants to know, we have enough time. We have 2 complete different ways of reading the next couple of lines. The first will be the Rashirilio. Okay, the Rashirilio understands that Rabbi Yanai asked Rabbi Chia, halacha l'maisa, can I rely on that which I said every Erev Shabbos? And he said, yeah, and he quoted the Braisa. And according to the Rashirilio, came a second question from Rabbi Yanai to Rabbi Chia. Okay, whoever is learning an art school, not the way the art school is learning a different shot. He's quoting. We'll learn both. But let's go first with the Rashirilio. And what happened over there is that Rabbi Yanai had a dream, and in his dream, he saw Mahu the Chamas Mekal Balshai Tolobi. What is it that I saw? Chamas is I saw. Mekel Balshai says that Asherilio is some sort of searching stick. Let's read it inside, all the way in the bottom of the right column. Mao de Chames Mekel Balsham Talibi. So in Masech Peskelim, Perek Tezvav Tanan, what's this Maka HaBalshin? Tamei, Maka HaBalshin is a searching stick. Searching stick is that when you would go to the taxing IRS agents, when they would come to go search your merchandise, they wanted to make sure that what you said you have in this container, you actually have in this container. You know, sometimes a person can have an inferior product on the top, and then they can use that as a cover up for something that's more chashuv, or tell them that there's only 5 pounds when there's 10 pounds. So they would have sticks that they would stick into the containers to look into to see is what you're saying is what is. That's what he's saying. And so he's quoting, where do we find this lashon? Masechtas Kelim. Over there, it's about Tuman Tara. And why is such a utensil susceptible to becoming tummy? Something that's a non-utensil never becomes tummy. So the last line of the right column, in the Rashirilio on the bottom, the Pnei and the sign in B'Shas Malach, because it's used. We call that we use it. Uperish Vala Aruchzal, Balei Hameches. Yesh Lahen, some of them Shemesim on top of the left column. That they have to take a look what's coming, the merchandise that's going. They have some sort of wooden stick, metal stick, leaders, and it's like pointing. And he brings that we have a targum by ubalash. Okay, now like this. Oh, it's a searching stick. So what's the question? According to the Rash, 3rd line from the top in the left column, because V'ra'a Rabbi Yanai b'chaloimoy. Rabbi Yanai saw shahoyu tolu boy oisamako. That Rabbi Yanai saw that there was such a stick on him. It was hanging over him. It was hanging on him. So he asked Rabbi Chia, interpret the dream. And Rabbi Chia responded, is according to the Rashirilio, I don't understand why the Rashirilio says a pasal lay Rabbi Shaya. I don't know where he got that from. Yeah, but before we had on Daf Samach Dalet, and Daf Samach Dalet, it's Rabbi Yanai, it's Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Chia Rabba. So there's another girse. No. Yeah, saying already, right? It's Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Ruba. Where's Rabbi Ishia? Because the next story is Rabbi Ishia. Okay, I don't know if that's a mistake, but let's go. Amalei that Rabbi Chia, if he asked Rabbi Chia, he says clearly. So Rabbi Chia responded, Asid at lahanik shurara al Yisrael. It means that you're going to be offered, you're going to be given, you're destined to have a position of authority over Yidden. Because the tax collectors, they themselves are just people, but they represent authority. So that's what he told him. Why did it come in over here? Always the pshat is because we were speaking about Rabbi Yana and Rabbi Chia, so another conversation. However, the Marafulda has a whole different pshat over here. And the whole different pshat is that it's a hemshech hasipur. But the Maud the Chamas Mekel, Baal Sheitoli B, is Rabbi Chia asking Rabbi Yana. And he tells him like this, the Marafulda says 5 lines from the top. I don't understand. You made the declaration out of Shabbos. Why did you make that declaration? Because you knew it's effective. So now that you have to do it halacha l'maisa, why are you coming to me? Well, it's anything that you did it already. It's like, why are you second guessing yourself? That's the way he learns pshat. Look inside the Marafulda. That calls that Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia is the one asking Rabbi Yanai. What I mean, you were lenient. How do I know that? Because all these tanoim are only effective if you make them out of Shabbos. But now you don't want to be toil on me. Like you're not a man. Like you don't have a spine. But you're going and you want to hang it on me. You want to hang it on me. Why don't you hang it on yourself? When should a person say, "Okay, I'm taking responsibility"? Rabbi Yanai knew enough to make this declaration before Shabbos. So why are you taking this stick and hanging it on me, hang it on you? To which Rabbi Yanai responded, no, there's a big difference. The difference is, and this is a very important point, that even when you know the halacha, if you have around you a person that has b'hashgacha pratis, a higher level of authority, he's like the Rabbanei Anash of this city, go ask him, even though you know the halacha. That's the right way of dealing with things. Amalei, asid at lahanik shurara al Yisrael. Now, it's amazing that he told them asidat. Asidat means that it could even be that at that time, not could be, at that time, they were on the same level. They both had a chabad. I don't know what. But Rabbi Yanai beruach hakodesh says the Marafulda, saw mamish, that you're destined. Or he was already appointed. He had some either he will be appointed because us is mashma, he will be appointed. The kiven that the minullah, since you were appointed, minashamayim lo hiroy Israel, yesh lismechalach yesim. That's another
question.
Yes.
Can a rabbi of a community make a tanai for the entire community ahead of time, like Erev Tashilin?
That question will be answered in the next story. Thank you, Kevin. Perfect. Mamish, the next story. Mamish. So now let's see how far we can get. Oh, Jonathan is here. After the Cholim and after the Shamayim. Very good. Now, Boishaya, Choyoloi Tanai Badai. Same thing. Again, the Hemshech HaSipur is mashma that all of these great Amiroim over here, they would make every out of Shabbos just in case they're going to find food on Shabbos that's Tevel. And they're going to be Mavatal Oinik Shabbos. So every out of Shabbos, part of the things is that if I'll have Tevel, and they make this pre-Shabbos declaration that's effective even on Tevel. Now what happened was like this. Rabbi Shai like tonight Vadai. But he made it for himself, not for someone else. What happened was that Chada Ita is Itza, a woman. Chada Itza Bashla Yirak. There was a woman that had cooked vegetables. Of course, we're speaking about not God forbid on Shabbos. But it must be that the vegetables were tevel. Well, there was a woman that realized on Shabbos, I have tevel. That Anshiyas Misakna, she forgot to be Misakin. She wanted to be able to eat her vegetables. Of course, she was not looking not to be Misakin, but she wanted to figure out if there's a way to be Misakin without violating the rabbinic tikkun mana. So also, so she went to this Rabbi Shaya, and Rabbi Shaya made a Tanai cave for himself, not for the people in the city. Very good. What he did was, Ushalach leZavdi ben Levi. Zavdi ben Levi was his Talmud, it was his Gabbai, it was his Shamish, was his friend. He sent Zavdi ben Levi that what? The Yisakein law, that he should rectify it. Yes. Now, look inside the middle of the Amid Marav folder. 14 lines from the top. Hoyloi Tanai Vadai, Al Vadai, Sheyisakein Lamachin. The Isha Achas Loi Hoylo Tanai. The woman did not make such a Tanai Me'erev Shabbos. Ubash Layerek B'Shak Chola Asr Me'erev Shabbos. So what he did was V'Sholch Rabbi Shaya. And she sent a Shiloh to Rabbi Shaya. What should I do? And Sholach Rabbi Shaya Zavdi ben Zav. She sack in law. Al Smach Tanai Shaloi Shalom Me'erev Shabbos. Now how does that work? Well, very good. Be bewildered. So says the Gemara. Wait. Keep your finger in the Marafol. We'll learn this Marafol. So in the Gemara. So Rabbi Bar Mamo, boy, what are you talking about? V'loy hoya Zavdi bar Levi tzarech mizakoya Rabbi Shaya biyarka. Okay, so there's a couple of steps we have to do over here, and I'm going to go on to say that. You know what? Keep your finger in the Marafol. I want you to learn both because I think each one adds another point, and when you put them both together, Gavaldik. First the Rash and then the Mara. He came first. So the Rash really is on the left column, 7 lines from the bottom. 7 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Shai did not own the vegetable of the woman. It wasn't his. The Meikara, Shehisna Me'erev Shabbos, when he made the Tanai, it was B'yerek Shaloi. Sheyehi Misukan, Maida. V'loy L'yerek Shalachedem. So he doesn't own it. V'troidem Shaloi Midas Ave. How can you separate Truma Shaloi Midas?
It's like Eruv Tavshilin.
So one second. That's what he said. But 1 second. I want to put together. Now go inside the Maraf folder. 9 lines from the bottom in the Amid. Tzarech Mizakil Rabbi Shaya. V'chiloi Hoya Zavdi Tzarech Liskos Tchila B'Yarek Rabbi Shaya. Shia Shaloi. In other words, he's saying like this. That even though Rabbi Shai made a Tanai only for what's his, you know what could have been effective? He's adding. If he would acquire it on Shabbos, if Rabbi Shai would acquire it on Shabbos, even though he didn't own it before Shabbos, it would work. In other words, step number 1 is that Asherilio. If I make a Tanai for me, I cannot do it if it's not mine. But there still is a solution. What will be the solution? For Zavdi to acquire it to Rabbi Shaya. That's what he's saying. Which means then it would be good. Okay, in other words, let's understand the question. We know that if Zavdi Bar Levi would acquire it for Rabbi Shaya, it would be good. I want to say parenthetically, I know that there's a whole issue of transferring items on Shabbos. We know that, but generally speaking, if it's L'tzoyrech mitzvah, Oynik Shabbos, we could do that. In other words, I can give you a gift of a bottle of wine on Shabbos. I'm going to say that. So just people are saying, how can you even do it? You could do it. Sometimes you could do it. For food, you could do it.
Used on Shabbos?
Used on Shabbos. Yeah, I'm saying stop. You know, there's another whole topic of it, not related, about transferring items, making a transference.
Yeah. Okay.
Generally, you can't do it. You might try and make a document. Okay, let's go back over here. So very good. No, it's Rabbi Shai made a Tanai. Rabbi Zavdi, and the Gemara's problem is how would it work? Because wouldn't he have to acquire it? So answers the Gemara. I know the word boy in the Bible always means a question, but this is typical. That Rab Zeira boy, Rab Zeira clarified. What do you think we're talking about? Manon Kaimen. Let me clarify the following. What are you even asking? If Rabbi Shaya would have said what we say by Eruv Tavshilin, if he would have says, not only for me, I'm making the Tanai for others, that and that's really his answer. What is he trying to say? He's trying to say that Rabbi Shaya, when he made that declaration out of Shabbos, he made it for others also. Now, turning to Daf Samach Vav on the top. Now, indeed, if he only would have spoke about himself, then which would have worked. Okay. Now, Zavdi did not acquire it. Zavdi did not acquire it. It must be that Rabbi Shaya's statement was not only for him. Now, I want to conclude with one important thing. We learned in the beginning of today's share, the beginning of the Gemara, Rabbi Yechanan says that by Tevel Vada, guys, by Tevel Vada, it has to be with a Shusay. So the Gemara is really giving you the message. I just want to repeat what we said in the words of introduction. That's really another part of what the Gemara is saying, the kitzit, in between the lines, which is that yes, by Tevel Vada, this Tanai is only if it's B'Reshusay. But what are we talking about over here? What do you think happened? Zavdi ben Levi did not separate the Trumas U'Maisres from the Yarek of the woman. He did not do that. You can't make the Tanai for that. He actually physically made the separation from Rabbi Oishia's produce. So the prerequisite in which we differentiate Tevel from Demai is that only by Demai you can make it, even though it's not Bereshus, is that by Demai I can do the separation from food that was not a Maireshus. Here, Rabbi Oishia had food, he made a declaration, and what he did to this woman to help her was not that Zavdi should make the separation from her food. That would not work. But since the items designated, and we're using the words identified on Shabbos, was B'Reshusay, even though it's Tevel, it's effective. The only thing is, it has to belong to Rabbi Shaya, and there are two options. Option number one is for Zavdi to make a kinyan, to acquire it. Or if Rabbi Shia made this pre-Shabbos declaration and he said, for me and for Kol Hayi Yisrael, Hadonim Irazois, Mamish, then it's going to be effective.
Isn't there a quantity issue?
In other words, a quantity issue would be is that Rabbi Shaya needs to have enough food, B'Reshusay, and if you have so many Jews in the city that just the Trumas U'Maisres is beyond what he has, then you can't. He used it up. But in the case was, he didn't use it up.
But in the case of Tevel, can you not say the entire city is his reshut? The rabbi's bishusa?
Only the rabbis think this way, Kavan. But if that would be the truth, you're in big trouble because I need your house for the building. And I think you need your house also. So you better take back